Okay, right. That's the last question. This is the last question in section B. So let's look at what's going on here. I think this is an important question to do because you will have had some history with ratios. So you want to make sure you cover these questions so that in the exam you're also able to pick up the marks and, you know, if you like, take advantage of previous knowledge. Okay, great. So what are we saying? A couple of things. You're given the operating profit margin of 15%. That's the operating profit, so you can work backwards and you can actually find the revenue, which you will need at some point. It's just this awareness of what's happening here. And then you're given some information on the equity section and non-current long-term liabilities. And then your first question pops up saying, oh, by the way, yes, I think what I'll do is, I'll actually, what's the word? Yeah, we'll do it this way. So the first question says, oh, by the way, what's the gearing ratio and interest cover for these? Please tick in a box. So look, I've done this and I've completely not, we can't see the actual thing again. Oops, well, how did that happen? Right, okay, 1 second. Let's take that in again. Oh, this is slightly longer, sorry about that. Okay, that's great. It's taking us back there quickly. So it's almost like, I think it's question, well, whatever, 40. Let's try 40. Oh well. 42. Yes, so we have this. This is the information. So in terms of, I think the first question is about, let's look at the interest cover. I mean, this is pretty straight. The interest cover pretty much is how many times will operating profit cover interest charges. So we're literally dividing the 42,000 by the 16, right? And you divide the 42,000 by the 16,000 and we have 2.656. So we know the answer here is 2.656. And then it asks us to do the gearing. So sometimes gearing can be interesting. Gearing really is here, if you like, depending on, I mean, what I did, first of all, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I did both sort of gearing tools. So typically gearing is debt over equity or debt over debt plus equity. So you need to almost try it both. They're not going to confuse you by giving you both answers. So if you so if you did debt, which is of course this thing here, if you like, so that's the 190,000 divided by equity, which was 420,000, or you did the 190,000 over 190,000 plus 420,000. To be honest, this is the more popular one, this one, but I'm just putting this out there just in case you might remember this from another time. So you do this 190 divided by 610,000, you will get 31. You'll get 31%. So your interest cover is 2.625 and then 31%. The D over E will give you something much higher, and then that's not on the, you won't see that on the answers. Okay, great. So that's question 1. So let's go to question 2. Oh, right. What's happening here again? Yes, of course, like I said, that's the problem with once you come here, and I'll come here to 42. So question 2 tells us that we now have which two of the following statements are correct. A reduction in tax rate will improve the interest rate cover. Well, this isn't true because, as you can imagine, the interest cover happens before we tackle the question of taxation, right? So there's no issue there. That's the first thing. If the level of long-term debt is reduced, so therefore if long-term debt is reduced, therefore the interest charge is reduced, so the interest cover will improve. Well, you have less interest to pay, and yes, that will definitely improve. So whether or not you're replacing the long-term debt with equity, key point is that interest cover will fall. In dividend cover, so you'd have more money to spread over your dividends, and so yes, that will improve. So number 2 is correct. And if the level of long-term debt is reduced, and so an asset turnover ratio, so your asset turnover is your revenue divided by your, if you like, your capital employed. So in effect, if you're reducing that, and still able to come out with a good turnover. It's not quite black and white that way, but basically what we're doing is we're reducing the denominator, and as a result of reducing the denominator, yes, you will have an improved asset turnover ratio. So your answer here is B. So let's just look at that, and let's look at the last one. Financial gearing is a measure of risk. True. Interest cover is a measure of profitability. No, it isn't. So this naturally takes itself out of the equation. So the answer is not 4, which knocks out C and D. 2 and 3 are definitely correct, and 1 and 2, 1 is wrong. So it leaves us with 2 and 3 there. So yeah, with these ones, I think it's just best, actually, for all 3 to 5, I think it's just better you just physically do something, as in you just do it, if you like, right? And then I think that's what I think the issue is here. I don't think you should guess. So, I mean, I'll just go to, it says, if you have a current ratio of 1.5 and 0.9, so I'm just going to go to a blank sheet and just prove it. I think you should do a question, do something to test it, and then you can't go wrong. So imagine you had a scenario like that, and then 900, and then you had 1,000. So those are your current liabilities, those are your current assets. I mean, that's 1.5, right? And that's 0.9. And the question says, okay, you take some cash to pay your liability. So imagine you just take out 100, because that's really what you're doing in effect, and recalculate the new figures. So here you have 1,400 over 900, and here you have 800 over 900. And then for yourself, you'll see the shift, if you like. And if you see your shift here divided by 900, you see a shift of going from 1.5 to 1.556. So I wouldn't sit there guessing or trying to do the theory, if you like. And here you see that you have 0.89, so you see a dip here, but you see an increase here. It's just math, really. The fact that, if you like, you're reducing just the change, really, and I think that's the key point. So the answer really here is B, because it means the current ratio will increase and quick ratio will decrease. So you're in exam mode. Again, you want to make sure you're applying as much as you can to the question, and just go for it. Question 4 was interesting. You really had to do a little bit of movement. So and also you almost had to be fair. You almost had to look around to see the information. So it says that you have a receivables to cash ratio of 2 to 2.5. They're asking for receivable days. So you almost had to look around. The answer wasn't just in here. I mean, let's look at this. It says you have information here, and you also have information in your material, which is where you had to go. So if you like, and again, I don't think it's a crazy question. It tells us that we have a quick ratio of 0.9. So you're thinking, okay, what else? What other information? You almost had to go away and look for information in the book. And you have payables of 50,000. So with payables of 50,000, I think that's your starting point. I think that would have been the best place to go. Imagine you might have worked around it differently, but that was very obvious there. So with payables of 50,000 and a quick ratio of 0.9, it means that your trade receivables and your cash is 45,000, right? Because it's 0.9 to 1, current assets to current liabilities, and therefore 50,000, it means that this is 45,000. So if this is 45,000, oh, that's brilliant. So we have 45,000, and we're told that the ratio of cash to trade receivables is 2 to 2.5. So literally I can now find what my trade receivable figure actually is. My trade receivable figure actually is, and that is 2 over 4.5 times 45,000. 2 over 4.5 times 45,000. 2 over 4.5 times 45,000, which takes us to 20,000. So we now know what our trade receivable is of 20,000. So the question here is, then what do we do with this? Now we need to go back to the question where it tells us that operating profit was 42,000, and we are told that we had a margin of 15%. So 15% of revenue gave us 42,000. So the question is, what is revenue? So 15% is equal to 42,000. I would like to know what 100% is. So that's 42. I usually do mine divided by 0.15. 42. Oops, sorry, what am I doing there? 42,000 divided by 0.15 is 280,000. So revenue is 280,000. So now I know what my trade receivable is. I know what my revenue is. I can now find that. It is long-winded. Over 28,000 times 365, right? And then that gives you, if you like, 26 days. That gives you 26 days. And that's how you tackle that. Yeah, just long-winded, but not impossible. And then, and I actually think that they should have given you some more material on residual income and that sort of thing. There doesn't seem to be any questions on that. So hopefully in section C you should tackle those type of questions to make sure you're happy with that area. And then finally, again, I think this is one you should physically work out. It's as if the turnover increases by 20%, the asset turnover will increase by 20%. Initially, I think it's, as opposed to guessing, just do it. Let's just see. So if you like, create a new slide. I'm not even going to use the answer. I haven't seen the what's the word? I'm not going to use their own actual figures, but I'm just going to almost imagine that I had turnover of 100,000, and I had I had turnover of what's the word, 100,000, and I'm just going to go with what's the word, an asset base of 200,000. I'm just going to go with this. And then, so right now I know that this is 0.5. Okay, so you're telling me to increase this by 20%. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to increase this by 20%. So what do I now have? I now have 120,000 divided by 200,000. That's my new situation. And then 120 divided by 200 gives me 0.6. This is my new situation. The question is, how much has, I'm saying this is increased by 20%. The question is, how much has this increased by? Well, if you look at this is increased by 0.1, right? And 0.1, this is an increase of 0.1 on 0.5, which is 20%. So it is true that you didn't need to use any, it's just kind of just proving it to yourself that in effect, just because I multiply this thing, the top by 1.5, I'm in effect multiplying the whole thing by 1.2 or by 20%. I'm in effect multiplying the whole thing by 20% actually. And then the next question, so that is true. So the next bit was asking the question was asking if they had different depreciation policy to its competitors, the asset turnover rate will not be comparable. And that is true, because here we're talking about talking about question 2 here. A different depreciation rate, asset turnover ratio will not be comparable. Yes, that's correct, because really ultimately your base would be falling every year at a different rate. Our denominators would be different. So fair enough, our turnovers might be the same, but our denominators would be different because you'd be using different depreciation rates, right? Because it's about the assets, how the assets are generating, and it'll be the net book value at the end of every year. So we wouldn't be able to, if you like, you would have that difference as a result of the change in depreciation happening from year to year. So we couldn't compare. Cool, great stuff, which leaves you with C. Both 1 and 2 are correct. Okay, great stuff, and that's the end. I'll see you in section C.